Dear old work platform, it's not you, it's us. Actually, it is you. Endless onboarding? Constant IT bottlenecks? We've had enough. We need a platform that just gets us. And to be honest, we've met someone new. They're called Monday.com, and it was love at first onboarding. Their beautiful dashboards, their customizable workflows got us floating on a digital cloud 9. So no hard feelings, but we're moving on. Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
So my hope is that you listen to this with compassion. You look at your numbing and avoiding habits with compassion. You are simply a human having a very human experience. This conversation is about starting to chip away at the reasons why and the ways how to change. All right? All right. You're listening to Make Some Noise Podcast, episode number 676. Welcome to Make Some Noise Podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. This is my first solo episode that is not part of the Coming Home to Yourself series, the 10 life lessons. And it's also not a mini-sode. You may have heard me mention on Friday, the mini-sode that came out, that was my last mini-sode. And all that means is that I used to do 4 interview episodes a month, every single Wednesday. And then 2 Fridays a month, I would do these short mini-sodes that were solo episodes. And I'm just not doing those anymore. I'm doing this instead. So thank you. Thank you for welcoming me in this very first solo episode that's not tied to a series. Here's the thing. I was going to record an episode, I should say, on the act of receiving, which has been a big topic for me personally lately. And I have all the notes, and I sat down and was ready to record it. I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to talk about numbing. And here's why. So I got out a Post-it, my favorite thing, and jotted down some bullet points, and I'm going to just run with it. I just complete, as I'm recording this, it's May 2nd. I just finished day 5 of the How to Stop Feeling Like Shit 5-day challenge. And we talked about 3 main habits from that book. If you're not familiar, my second book, How to Stop Feeling Like Shit, the 14 habits that are holding you back from happiness, is my most popular book, sold hundreds of thousands of copies, translated into 20 languages. And there's going to be a program about it. I'll tell you quickly about it here in just a second. But I did a free 5-day challenge, and I pulled 3 of the most common habits from that book. And one of them was numbing. Being in that group, in that community of women, the most brave, courageous, vulnerable women, telling their stories, sharing their challenges and their struggles, it was a lot about numbing and people struggling with it. And it's one of those things that I still do as well. I don't drink anymore. I'm going to use alcohol as an example of a numbing mechanism and what that looked like for me to stop doing that and lean more into feeling my feelings instead of pushing them away and avoiding them. But alcohol doesn't have to be the only thing that we use for numbing. There's so many different ways. And maybe I should call it avoiding. Just avoiding there, because that is essentially what we're doing, whether it's alcohol or shopping or scrolling. Phone scrolling, doom scrolling is a big one these days. Sometimes it's food. Sometimes it's relationships. Sometimes it's drugs. Good old-fashioned drugs. That'll be the numbing mechanism of choice for some of us. But it truly is avoiding. And so speaking of, before I get too far into this episode, on May 18th, we start the How to Stop Feeling Like Shit 8-week experience. I cannot wait to get started on this. Week 4, we're going to be talking about this topic. We're going to be working on this topic, not just talking about it. And it's really about looking at the ways that you shut down, the ways that you avoid, and how to show up instead. We're going to get real about the habits that you turn to when things get hard, when things get messy and uncomfortable, and find new ways to meet that discomfort with curiosity, with care, with compassion instead of avoiding it altogether. It's 8 modules. We start with values because it's important for you to have a map. That very first week, we are going to do the foundation of everything. You'll identify your core values so you can start making decisions from that place that feel aligned, that honor the person that you want to be, the version of you that you are becoming. And that way you don't have to second guess yourself every time. No more self-abandoning, no more people-pleasing. There's going to be a whole module on people-pleasing and boundaries, how to set boundaries. I know that's going to be a big week. It's week 2. I wanted to give that to you early so you have time to work on it and ask me questions and things like that. We're going over perfectionism. That's week 3. Numbing out, avoiding is week 4. Control is week 5. Ooh, that's going to be a big one. Talking about how the illusion of control really keeps us from trust. It keeps us from real growth, and how to shift that into a more empowering way to be and a more empowering kind of strength. Week 6 is self-sabotage. Raise your hand if you self-sabotage. Understanding your resistance, why you keep doing it, and uncovering the ways that you've been getting in your own way, because it becomes a chronic pattern for many of us. I still do it sometimes. You're going to learn tools how to move forward with self-compassion and clarity. We also have a week on fear and resistance. And the last week is going to be about integration and moving forward. My hope is that throughout the program, in that last week, you're going to pull all together all of the tools that you've learned and ways that you've learned to coach yourself, so you can have these tools long after we are done working together. That is what I want for you. I've broken it down into 3 payments that are stretched out over 3 months. It's more doable. AndreaOwen.com/habits-course. And of course, that is in the show notes. I would love to see you. Even if you're listening to this like a week after we start, I still want you to join us. There's still a way to catch up. We have an integration week that we're off about halfway through, so you will have time to catch up. DM me on Instagram if you want more questions, and let's chat. All right, let's get into it. Numbing. 2011, I decided to get sober. It took me 2 times to figure it out. That's another story for another time. That's not what I came here to talk about. But very quickly, I realized the difference between recovery and sobriety. And here's one of the reasons that I realized it. So previously, before that, years and years before that, my therapist had told me that in her opinion, in her professional opinion, how rude of her, I was a codependent, that I struggled with codependency. I was like, how dare you tell me where my flaws are? I thought I came to therapy so I could complain to you about my family and friends and coworkers, and then you could tell me what they needed to do to change. Genuinely. So she was telling me that for a long time. I think back then I did read the book Codependent No More. I was not ready for that. This was back in my 20s, y'all. So then it was 2007. I dated a drug addict. He went to rehab. I went with him to visit, and I'm sitting in this group therapy, and they started talking about love addiction. And I was like, why are you talking about my life? So I went to their handy dandy bookstore, bought a book on love addiction, Pia Melody's Facing Love Addiction. It's a great book. I have never read a book where she even had like a graph, like a pie chart cycle pattern type of thing. I was like, that is my autobiography of how I behave in relationships. And it was painful to read. It was painful to see it right there in black and white. You know, some of you tell me like, oh, did you write this book for me? I feel like you wrote this book for me, Andrea. And I'm like, I did, because I've been watching your patterns. That was the first book for me where I said, this author wrote this book about me. She's been spying on me. And it was humbling. And also I got some hope. I was like, oh, is this it? I can stop feeling like shit. So that was love addiction. And I started to get help for that. I went to recovery meetings for codependents and love addicts and started to see the light and started to actively work on changing my behaviors. That was very different from how I had handled therapy before. So I was in my very early 30s at this point. Actively started working on changing my behaviors. It was so uncomfortable. And then a few years passed and I realized pretty quickly that my drinking ramped up a lot. when I started doing that. So when I made the decision to get sober, I already knew, I had a hunch that there was a difference between sobriety and recovery, because anyone can stay sober from alcohol. That's just abstaining from it. That's just stopping drinking. I felt like to me, that was the easy part. The thing with codependency and love addiction is that you really can't, like, there's controversy in like what equates to sobriety with those types of process addictions versus a substance addiction. We don't need the substance to survive, but we do need relationships and other people. So getting sober from alcohol, and I'm emphasizing the word sober, was, I won't say sobering. It was interesting because I had to really look at the process that I was doing, and stopping the drinking wasn't the answer to my problems. Just quitting drinking did not solve my problems. That's where recovery came in. Numbing out was simply a way, I'm going to sort of interchangeably use the words numbing out and avoiding, because to me, they're the exact same thing. Numbing out really was just about avoiding feelings and emotions. That's it. It was running away from my life, and my life was uncomfortable because there was a lot of emotions involved. And I've talked to you guys about you all, this group of us. Gather round. We are deep feelers and deep thinkers. I don't think that this makes us better than anyone else. I don't think that this matters at all, except that we were born with this sort of innate ability to reach and feel into depths that perhaps other people don't. Either they don't have the ability or they don't want to. They have the ability to really, truly shut that out and not be curious about going to the depths of these different versions of themselves, like looking for deep meaning about life and these sort of existential questions that we tend to ask in these groups. And sometimes I'm like, what I would give to be one of those people. It's just not, I just don't think it's in their destiny. Nobody's wrong or bad for it. Either way, just different. That's why I call all of us seekers. We're seeking something. It's spirituality, deeper meaning of life, becoming better, growing and evolving as a human. That's what we're seeking. Some of those things I just mentioned may be more important to you. You may call it something else, but we are seeking something outside of ourselves, whether it's our own evolution, whether it's an aspect of spirituality, something like that. And not everybody feels the same way. Not everybody has that same path ahead of them. And these types of people, it is my opinion that we have the ability to internalize emotions and the experience of emotions and feelings deeply. So we do need to take a quick ad break. When we get back, I'm going to talk about what that experience is like. So we'll be right back. If you're a woman over 40 dealing with perimenopause, you don't have to accept it as just another part of aging. Did you know there are so many perimenopause symptoms? Hot flashes and night sweats, trouble sleeping, painful sex, vaginal dryness, and libido change, weight and body changes, brain fog and memory lapses, moodiness, anxiety and depression, period problems, hair and skin changes, joint pain, bone loss, and fracture risk. The experts at MIDI Health understand what you're experiencing and know how to help. MIDI clinicians are menopause experts dedicated to providing safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions. Visits and prescriptions are covered by major insurance providers, no membership fees or hidden costs. If you're uninsured or Medicare is out of network under your plan, they also offer affordable cash payment for services. I know for me, as I'm about to turn 50 in 2025, finding a doctor that specializes in perimenopause and menopause is incredibly important. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
Carla only.
Let's be honest, life is a lot right now. Stress is high, anxiety is creeping in, and it's easy to feel like you're barely holding it together. If that's where you're at, or even if you simply love feeling a little more grounded, Headspace might be exactly what you need. It's the app that's helped me feel more grounded, less overwhelmed, and so much calmer. Whether it's guided meditations, breathing exercises, or a quick calming tool, it's full of practices that actually work. And no matter where you are on your mindfulness journey, total newbie or someone who's been meditating for years or somewhere in between like I am, there's always something that meets you right where you are. Honestly, every time I open the app, it feels like it was made just for me. When I'm short on time, those go-to sessions are perfect. I absolutely love their breathing exercises. And with over 1,000 hours of content, I can always find something that fits my day and my mood. So if you're ready to actually mean it when you say, I'm good, Headspace can help. Feel good and mean it when you say it. For a limited time, get Headspace free for 60 days. Go to headspace.com/make some noise. That's HEADSPACE.com/make some noise to unlock all of Headspace free for 60 days. Headspace.com/make some noise.
Dear old work platform, it's not you, it's us. Actually, it is you. Endless onboarding? Constant IT bottlenecks? We've had enough. We need a platform that just gets us. And to be honest, we've met someone new. They're called Monday.com, and it was love at first onboarding. Their beautiful dashboards, their customizable workflows got us floating on a digital cloud 9. So no hard feelings, but we're moving on. Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
All right, so here we are living our life. Seekers, deep thinkers, deep feelers, deep emotional being. And I think this is where it depends. It starts to depend how you grew up, what kind of culture you were raised in terms of your family of origin, in terms of, perhaps any religious upbringing that you have, but especially from your family of origin, and probably somehow to do with your DNA, how or when you realized that emotions were very scary, that they hurt too much, that they are too uncomfortable, they're too uncertain, they're too unpredictable, so we avoid them at any cost. And that avoidance might look different for people. But generally speaking, that avoidance can look like some kind of quote unquote, like numbing out mechanism, whether it's a process addiction, like codependency or love addiction, scrolling, even things like overachieving can be a way that we numb out, or it's a substance addiction. The reason that we do that, and again, I've said it over and over again, I used to call it a mini vacation. When I would drink several glasses of wine at the end of the day, it was partly because of my anxiety, which is an emotion in many forms. And I just could not and had not dealt with a lot of the, what I call like the four holy emotions. I had not dealt with grief that I had had in my life. I hadn't dealt with shame and the terror I was experiencing of being a new mom and having my whole life change. And also some rage and anger mixed in there, like these really big emotions. Part of why I call those the four holy emotions is because they're so impactful. They are full contact emotions. And those for me were the scariest, simmering beneath the surface. I was so afraid of letting them out. I was so afraid of not only what they would do to me, the experience of actually letting them rip, letting them loose, but what impact it might have on other people. I didn't trust myself enough that I had the ability to emote and be demonstrative with my emotions in any kind of healthy way. I didn't know what that looked like. That wasn't ever modeled for me. So I was clueless. I had no idea. And I also, for a long time, didn't know that was the problem. I just thought that I was like taking the edge off. I just knew I wanted the chatter in my brain to slow down. I wasn't even asking it to stop. Just can we slow down? Can I just slow down these racing thoughts? Just the feeling of wanting to crawl out of my skin. I used to close my eyes and imagine that I had a zipper from the top of my head all the way down to my feet. And I would just unzip it and crawl out of my skin and walk away. I was like itching with anxiety. just crawling with it. And so much of that was because of these bottled up emotions that I had never dealt with and I had never let them out. So I want to pause and offer that if you are sitting there listening to this and you're like, I don't know if I do that. How do you know? How do you know if you're a person that can't deal with emotions? If you've been operating the same way for so long, how do you know even if you are someone who might handle your emotions in a healthy way? Here's a couple of things that might be clues for you. And this was in retrospect for me. I've said this many times. One of the clues for me that I realized was that I was deeply uncomfortable being with other people's feelings. Didn't want to. And it was because I didn't want to be with my own. I did not want to be with my own emotions. So I sure as shit couldn't be with yours. There were two things that clued me into that. One of them was very much in retrospect. So I've always been interested in some kind of helping profession. I wasn't interested in nursing or being an educator or anything like that, but I knew I wanted to be of service somehow. So the first thing I thought of being was a therapist. I really liked my therapist. I thought what she did was interesting, and I was super interested in personal growth. So I felt like that was kind of my only option. I looked into it, was confident that I would be good at it, but I remember thinking this: I don't want to sit with people while they talk about their difficult emotions. The thought of that made me incredibly uncomfortable. I had very little compassion for other people. Like, I'll be honest with you, I didn't. I had very little compassion for other people. And I know that might sound really shitty, but it's true. And I'm talking about, like, this is like when I was in my early mid-20s at the oldest. I had very little compassion for other people because I had zero compassion for myself. I rushed to judgment first for myself and other people. So I thought, I don't want to do that. That's too hard. So I chose the fitness industry. So then when I found out about life coaching, I was like, oh my God, it's similar, but better. I don't have to focus on people's emotions or problems. We just focus on what's happening right now and where they want to go. Sign me up. That's really what it was. So that was the first thing that I realized, like, maybe I do have a problem with my own emotions, because I didn't want to be a therapist, because I didn't want to have to sit in a room and that somebody else's and hold space for their emotions. The other thing is that I wrote about this story in one of my books. The very first time I saw empathy in action was at coach training. I was set up with two other women that were going through the training with me. So it was the three of us. Two people there would be a coach client situation, and then the third person was the observer. So in this situation, one of the women that was being coached, her husband had just been diagnosed recently with cancer, and she brought it up, and the woman coaching her offered her empathy. So I'm sitting like a foot away from, almost like kind of like in between them, watching. I witnessed the most beautiful thing unfold. I had never seen anything like it before in my life. She acknowledged the other woman's feelings. She let her cry, did not once try to fix it, did not try to strategize with her, didn't ask about what kind of treatment he was in, his prognosis, nothing. It was all about the other woman's feelings, acknowledging them, and just giving her space and making her feel accepted for having the feelings that she did, making her feel understood and not wrong for having them, not pushing them aside. It was wild to me. I probably sat there with my mouth hanging open, like just not even understanding what I was witnessing. And I'm sounding dramatic because it was. I did not grow up seeing that. And I didn't, and it's not like I grew up seeing abuse or hatefulness or super egregious outward judgment, nothing like that. But I never saw that. That was beautiful and made me uncomfortable in a weird way, because we were sitting in that discomfort of the feelings. And then, wouldn't you know it, we were able to just like move on and feel like a loop was completed. And then that was it. And it blew my mind. And so then I had a name for it. That's empathy. That was in 2008. So I realized then what that was. And I also realized too in that moment, oh, this is the thing that I have a real challenge around. Not only giving it giving someone empathy, which I realized was a skill that you can learn, that you have to practice. It's like the reps and sets at the gym. You just have to put in the work to learn how to do it and practice it, but also receiving it. Having someone hold space for me, that's what that next episode's going to be on, the one I told you about that I was going to record today about receiving in general. I've had a not so great track record with receiving, letting people love me, letting people see me. Anyway, that'll be the next solo episode. But it was a huge realization that I had a problem with feelings. I didn't like them. So if you are also someone who struggles to give or receive empathy, yes, it's a skill, but if it was never modeled for you, and it's kind of a weird concept, if you get incredibly uncomfortable when someone is sharing their feelings with you and you jump to fix it, or maybe kind of, sweep it under the rug, or go immediately to pep talk, things like that makes you incredibly uncomfortable, you might be someone who avoids your own emotions as well. And also, if you avoid hard conversations, if you hold on to resentments instead of setting a boundary, you might also really struggle with emotions, because you guys, it's not the hard conversation that we're worried about. Like, of course, that's part of it. I don't know what to say. What if they push back? Like the fear around that, of course. But what we're really afraid of is the massive discomfort that's going to come with that hard conversation. That's what we don't want. I don't want it either. And I know how to do it. It's not the conversation that we're afraid of. It's the emotions. So those are just kind of two clues as to, you might be somebody who avoids emotions. Because side note, I do think that I was talking about this in the 5-day challenge. I do think that some numbing activities that we do simply become a habit based on the dopamine that we get when we engage in the habit. For instance, scrolling through Instagram reels or TikTok or Facebook reels, or even just the regular feed. That was meant to keep us addicted to it. It was meant to keep us swiping and scrolling. Same with like dating apps. The dopamine hit that we get from that has done something to our brains to make us keep going back for it. So I think that's a valid point I just wanted to make. And it can also be ways that we just avoid feelings. Before I get into solution, I want to name and briefly talk about the reasons why we stay in this place of avoiding. It's not because we're not smart. It's not because we, don't have the willpower or the discipline. Sometimes it's just we just don't have the tools. But even sometimes when we get the tools, we read the book, we listen to the podcast or whatever, the next step of integrating them can feel like, again, I'm going to be dramatic here, but it can feel like the end of the world, because our brains have been wired a certain way from childhood, from our past experiences, many of them from our primary experiences. And so our brains get wired a certain way, and then that determines our nervous system. If our nervous system believes that it is unsafe to talk about feelings, to have hard conversations, because we're going to experience something very difficult and have incredibly difficult emotions, of course you're going to avoid it. Your nervous system's main job is to keep you safe. It runs the show. It's the wiring. It's the motherboard. That's what I call it. When I say like the motherboard is fried, that's what I'm saying. Like my nervous system is shot to shit. It's always going to try to keep you safe, and it's largely on an unconscious level. So we don't even know what's happening, and it just becomes a habit, and then decades pass, and then all of a sudden we're this age and we're like, oh, well, I've been doing this for a long time. But I wanted to pause and say that because that's what I was talking about in the 5-day challenge group. It's like so many women in there are beating themselves up over it. And it's like, oh, honey, let's back up for a second. You've been doing this because it works. Your body has been taking care of you, and you've been benefiting from it by avoiding all of these feelings. Your nervous system has been benefiting and keeping you safe and keeping you alive, and all of those great things that matter. So my hope is that you listen to this with compassion. You look at your numbing and avoiding habits with compassion. You are simply a human having a very human experience. This conversation is about starting to chip away at the reasons why and the reasons how, or the ways how to change. All right. So I am going to read from How to Stop Feeling Like Shit. Wouldn't you know? What chapter is this? Chapter 4, I think. I think it's chapter 4. Hold on. Chapter 3. checking out, are your numbing mechanisms still working for you? So I'm going to skip to the good part. And if you have the print version of the updated and revised edition, the yellow copy, this is on page 52. And there are 8 tools that I talk about in this chapter about how to start feeling your feelings, even if you are a beginner. I am going to touch on some of them. I'm not going to read directly from the book. I might a little bit, but what I'm going to focus on are tools that are more, kind of intellectual, if you will, just kind of mind stuff versus somatic stuff. And so I want to say this too. If you are really diving into this topic around feeling your feelings, for me, this has been probably a 15-year process that I've been working on this. And for the first probably 8 or so years, it was all mind stuff. And that's the journey I needed to go on. I did not feel comfortable yet getting into somatic work until I was ready. It took me many years. And I think that journey is yours uniquely. So these are more about thinking your way through it. Okay. All right. So this first one I'm going to mention is about accepting that your feelings are deserving of existing in the first place. Period. This might sound very rudimentary, like, of course, but we do a lot of comparative storytelling. We think that our challenges, our struggles, our circumstances, our stories are not good enough or not bad enough, I guess I should say. Somebody else has it worse than we do. I shouldn't be feeling this way. We get told by other people that we shouldn't feel a certain way. Oh, don't be scared. Don't cry. It's this, oh, don't get me started on that. We are such a culture avoidance of feelings. Can you imagine if we just let people feel and express their emotions however they wanted to? How much that would change. But that's where that can start, is the comparative storytelling, people telling you how you should feel or how you should not feel, or growing up in a home where feelings were made fun of, or you were told that you should feel a certain way, shouldn't feel a certain way. And I think for many of us, we need to start there. We need to start unlearning that feelings are bad, or that there's any such a thing as a negative feeling. I will get up on my soapbox when I hear that. There's no such thing. Feelings are neutral. They just are. I think some of them can be more uncomfortable for other people. I prefer joy over shame, but they're both emotions. They're both feelings. I just say some are much heavier than others. Some are more difficult to digest than others. That's all. So that's really it, is about the working on not judging your feelings as being wrong, not diminishing them, not putting a timeline on them. It is beyond me that in corporate America, I think the norm is 3 days off for bereavement if somebody you love dies. It's wild that we put a marker, mild post on that. I'm actually going to read this one very short paragraph from that section of the book. Quote, "The biggest way we judge our feelings is by thinking we shouldn't have them at all. What if you let go of that? What if feelings were like sweating or sneezing? You can't stop them. And sometimes when we try to hold in a sneeze, we fart. So something is coming out no matter what. Feelings and emotions are simply our body's way of doing what they need to do. What if you tried accepting that?" End quote. All right, we need to take one more ad break. When we get back, I'm going to talk to you about 2 additional tools to feel your feelings. We'll be right back. Real quick, did you know your metabolism impacts literally everything? From your energy levels to how well you sleep to how your body responds to food and workouts. Yep, it's all connected. So when I found Lumen, it was a total game changer. It's this sleek little handheld device that measures your metabolism just by breathing into it. You wake up, take a breath into Lumen, and boom, it tells you if you're burning mostly carbs or fat and gives you a personalized plan for the day. What I love is that it doesn't just give you the data, it actually tells you what to do with it. Whether you want to fuel your workouts better or stabilize your energy, it's got you. Plus, Lumen adjusts to your cycle and hormones. So hello, support through perimenopause. It's like having a tiny metabolic coach in your pocket, and it's made me feel more in control of my health than ever before. If you're ready to stop guessing and start understanding your body, check out Lumen. The warmer months are coming. Spring back into your health and fitness. Go to lumen.me/noise to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/noise for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Let me just tell you, Cozy Earth makes the most comfortable pajamas I've ever worn in my life. I am not exaggerating when I tell you this. The fabric is insanely soft. It feels like someone spun it from clouds and whispered affirmations into it. And don't get me started on the sheets. They're like butter. I have a white set. They're cool, luxurious, and yes, I actually look forward to crawling into bed like it's a spa appointment. Now that the weather's warming up, I've noticed how well they regulate temperature. I run fairly hot at night, like I wake up sweaty, the back of my neck, but these sheets, game changer. Pajamas, game changer. I sleep cooler and wake up actually rested. And when I'm wearing their pajamas in the morning, especially on the weekends, I stay in them for half the day. I feel spoiled, treat myself level spoiled. Honestly, Cozy Earth has made my bedtime and slow mornings feel like a full-on ritual. And if you haven't tried them yet, you are absolutely missing out. But here's the good news. They have a 100-night trial and 10-year warranty. So if you're not obsessed, you can send it back. But trust me, you won't want to. Luxury shouldn't be out of reach. Use code NOISE for 40% off best-selling sheets, pajamas, and more. Trust me, you won't regret it. Sanctuary awaits at Cozy Earth.
This episode is brought to you by Heyday. Feeling stressed? Take a moment for yourself with Heyday. Stroll through rows of golden wheat, tend to cute barnyard animals, and discover the joys of a digital farm retreat. You don't have to hop in a car or catch a plane. Escape to the farm at the tap of a finger. With Heyday, you're not just tending to a farm, you're tending to yourself. Heyday. Search Heyday, that's Hay space DAY, in your favorite app store. Heyday is a free-to-play mobile game and offers optional in-app purchases and random rewards.
All right, the other one I want to mention is about getting curious about your feelings. Until the day I die, I'm going to talk about curiosity and how helpful it can be. Curiosity is one of the pillars from my coach training, and that truly changed my life. Curiosity over control is something is a mantra that I try to implement. But when we can get curious about something instead of having a quick and fast judgment on it or an expectation around it, or when we are quick to be definitive about something, in this case, that we shouldn't be upset about this, or this is too uncomfortable to feel. What if you got curious about it? And what that would look like is to look at it as if you don't understand it. Like you're a child with childlike wonder trying to figure out what this is. And so a question you might ask is, what about this matters so much? What might happen if we actually felt our feelings? And then what? And then what? And then what? And then you keep asking those questions. So it's just a quick example. This is where I think that AI could be really helpful. You pop into ChatGPT, something like, what kind of questions would I ask myself if I wanted to get curious about my feelings instead of judging or avoiding them? I'm going to do that actually when I'm done recording this. But this is one of the reasons I love AI, is they can help us with things like that when we get stuck on how to do a particular tool in personal growth. So curiosity. The last one I'm going to talk about in this before I get into a little bit of somatic work, learning to trust yourself and your feelings. Lord, you knew I wasn't going to walk away from this episode without talking about self-trust. I know I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I'm going to say it again. One of the reasons I avoided feeling my feelings and then processing them, let alone being demonstrative about my feelings and emoting, was that I didn't trust where it would take me. Again, this might sound dramatic. I wasn't completely convinced that they wouldn't kill me. I was like, are you sure no one has died? From shame, from grief, from heartbreak. Because this is cracking me open. And I feel like it's going to kill me. Truly. I know many of you, if not all of you, have been in that place where you felt like one more thing happens, it's just going to kill you. The discomfort of the emotions is going to kill you. I also felt like if I open up Pandora's box, I may never stop crying because I had worked so hard to shove everything down. And that's what I was taught. That's what I was taught. That's how you do it. That's the solution. That's the answer. And I do think people, when they kind of get to that place where emotional stuff comes up, that you either go to a place of fear. For many people, I go to a place of anger. I get angry about whatever it is. And I do think that that's just sort of whatever your personality is. But anger, I felt like, was the quickest. I had the easiest access to that emotion right away. And then after that, it was easy for me to shut down. I would process that very quickly and then I would be done. But I was never getting to the actual real emotion that I was feeling, the additional emotion I was feeling, because many times anger is a secondary emotion and it stems from hurt. It stems from hurt. That was the only one really that I could easily go to. How do we get to that place of trusting ourselves? I think that is some soul work. I think that comes with time and age as well, and experience. When you have had to be resilient to go through some shit in your life and you have come out more or less okay on the other side, or if you've come out better for it on the other side, you can look back and realize some of those things sucked. That was rough. I don't want to do it again. I don't even want to wish it on anybody that I don't like. And I'm pretty resilient. I'm pretty strong. I can land on my feet. I can learn from my mistakes. That is how we start to trust ourselves that we're going to be okay. As time goes on, we start to sort of hear our own voice calling us, and we self-abandon less and less. That's what the whole Coming Home to Yourself podcast series was about. And I do think that eventually, even without trying super hard, you can get to that place of self-trust, but there are measures that you can take to actively work on it. That was episode 1 of that series. But I think the bottom line for this one is that when you start to actively choose to stop avoiding or stop numbing, you can start showing up. And the pathway for that is that you start to recognize your emotions, you start to process them, realize that they're not going to kill you, realize that when you do actually walk in and surrender to them, they don't stick around as long as we think that they will. And it's typically not quite as hard as we think it's going to be. Sometimes it is, but it definitely doesn't last as long. And the after effects aren't as bad as we think it's going to be. Like, we think it's going to take us down. We think it's going to beat the shit out of us, leave us bleeding in the street. Not so much. But once we start to do that, it opens up space and energy to be able to show up more in your life and for yourself. It allows you to be able to show up for yourself. That's really what ends up happening. I didn't know that until several years into my sobriety and recovery, actively working on it. I was like, oh, look at what's happening. Look at what's happening. So that's that. There's this Pema Chodron quote that's in this chapter that I want to read you, because this pretty much sums it up. It's from her book, When Things Fall Apart. We'll link to it in the show notes. It's such a beautiful book. And she says, only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible be found in us. God damn it. Right? Only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible be found in us. I remember seeing that quote early on in my sobriety and recovery and being both hopeful and terrified at the same time of that. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what that looked like. Exposing myself over and over to annihilation. I knew exactly what she was talking about. She was talking about feelings. She was talking about grief. She was talking about terror. She was talking about rage and shame and all of their friends coming. That's what annihilation is. Heartbreak. I was also hopeful. I hope that you are too. I want to just briefly touch on the other tools around learning how to trust yourself with your emotions, actually feeling your feelings, digging in to see what's even there, because that can be sometimes a place that we need to start. And that is with more somatic modalities. And you can do a Google search on those, but these are things like, I mentioned this in the mini-sode from last Friday, EMDR. There is, even EFT tapping is considered a somatic work. I think even meditation can be put into there. Even things like ecstatic dance or yoga, breath work is a huge one. Oh my gosh, breath work. I don't think I mentioned that last Friday. Also, there are things like muscle testing and other modalities that I'm not super sure about because I'm not trained in them, but there are so many trained clinicians and therapists that do magical work with people. And there's also psychedelic therapy, which I have chosen to be a mode for me now that I told you I did, just the kind of intellectual stuff. Let's just stick to the brain for a long time. And it took me as far as it was going to take me. And I knew very intuitively that psychedelic therapy, and I want to emphasize therapy, this is not recreational psychedelics. I'm not judging if people want to do that, whether it's for their own personal growth or just for fun. But for me, this looked like psychedelic therapy, and it has moved the needle quite a bit. And I talk about that in the special secret podcast that I have on psychedelic therapy. Yes, I'm going to update it soon. I think there's only 3 episodes in it right now, but we'll link to that in the show notes. It's not in my regular feed. It's a secret podcast. So thank you so much for being here and for being on my first kind of real maiden voyage of these solo episodes. This one wasn't super well organized. I apologize if it was a little bit all over the place. I did my best. And please let me know if there are special topics that you want me to riff on. It might be things that I need to do a little bit of research on first. And if it's something I need to do a lot of research on first, I will find an expert and interview them to be on this show. But I'm happy to have more topics that you want me to talk about here, because this podcast is for you. It's not just here for me to talk and listen to myself talk during the editing process. No, it's for you. I am here to be of service to you, the listener. I appreciate you so much. Your time is incredibly important, and it's a non-renewable resource, and that is not lost on me. Last thing, I promise, don't forget, How to Stop Feeling Like Shit 8-week experience is open for registration. We start on May 15th, but even if you're a little late, you can still start. If this resonated with you, if this topic resonated with you, definitely go check it out. AndreaOwen.com/habits-course. Of course, that link is in the show notes. I would love to see you there. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I would be so incredibly grateful if you haven't done so already, if you could leave a review of this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Super easy if you already listen to your shows over there. But if you don't, or maybe you have the app on your phone, but you listen to this show on a different app, if you could leave a review for this show, it matters so much. I wish I could express how much it matters. I also wish that it didn't matter so much, but alas, it does. So if you haven't already, please go review and rate the show. It would mean so much to me. And thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing day.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer? Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. It's the Sleep Number Everything Smart Bed sale. Every smart bed and base are on sale during our Memorial Day event. Up to 50% off, plus free home delivery. Limited time, exclusively to Sleep Number store near you. Learn more at sleepnumber.com.